Okie dokie. So today's seminar is out of this book here, the Unhappiness Syndrome, and actually it's really only chapter 1 or part 1, and so in actual fact it's only that many pages out of this book is going to be part 1, and it's really just understanding what is the unhappiness syndrome. And then my plan is next week to have a seminar which will cover 11 of the common symptoms and remedies of the unhappiness syndrome. Then I'm going away to Melbourne and then Brisbane, and then the week after that to continue this topic with unhappiness syndrome in work, unhappiness syndrome in relationships, and unhappiness syndrome in our spiritual life. So this book's broken down to different categories of tendencies of the unhappiness syndrome. So today's seminar is going to be just really understanding what is the unhappiness syndrome. Find out with this question, are you in love with unhappiness? I was quite surprised. I thought I was a happy person, but when I started going through this and studying this, I realized that, I'm not as happy as I could be. There's definitely some more happiness that I need to find in my life. And when we get towards the end of today's talk, there's a part where it's the 4 keys to understanding, or checkpoints to see whether you have got rid of unhappiness out of your life, if you've said goodbye to unhappiness. And I was so surprised when I came to these 4 points that I couldn't just go yes, 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 yes. The first I was like, oh my gosh, no, that's not true, that's not me. So I think you'll be surprised when we come to the checkpoints about really whether you've got rid of unhappiness in your life. So anyway, this is the starting point, though, is to think about whether we have the unhappiness syndrome, and if we do, then we can start to change ourselves to get rid of the unhappiness syndrome. Okay, the Master said in this book, he said your love of unhappiness could be interfering with your happiness. We never thought we could love unhappiness, right? You think, how can I love unhappiness? I don't love unhappiness, I love to be happy. But what we're going to really find today is this unhappiness syndrome, or loving unhappiness, is subconscious. It's not something we deliberately do. It's something that we subconsciously have within us. Master described it as, he said, the unhappiness syndrome, it's a condition in which the subconscious mind fosters a desire for unhappiness that manifests self-destructive thoughts and behavior. So it's a subconscious, it's within our subconscious mind, this condition. So we don't even recognize it's there unless we look for it. So, and then it manifests as self-destructive thoughts and behavior. So we have this thing deep within us that we don't know is there, but it causes us to react in a way that brings negative things into our life, or unhappiness into our life. I mean, we all want to be happy, right? If you ask anybody, do you want to be happy? Everybody says, yes, I want to be happy. It's a basic human nature to want to be happy. But as Master said, so many people are choosing thoughts and words and actions in their life that creates unhappiness. I mean, it's in our relationships with people, it's in our work, it's in the way that we look at events that unfold. It's so many aspects of our life. When we look at it, we realize that my way of looking at something, or my way of dealing with something, has made me unhappy. There's actually a real simple one that I'd like to explain of a friend of mine this is just an example of one very simple thing that was a person who was staying here at Australia Shoshinkan, and she had come from Japan, and so had looked forward to coming here and staying here for maybe 4 months or something. And probably before she left Japan, she probably thought, this is such a wonderful opportunity to come to Australia Shoshinkan. I can't wait to come here and spend living the life of a monk in the temple for 4 months. And once she got here, she was so happy and everything was going so great. But then there was an unexpected opportunity came up for her to be able to look after another person's house. So somebody else was going to be going away overseas for 2 weeks, and this person asked her, can you look after my house for 2 weeks? And she thought, how wonderful. Yes, I'd love to look after your house for 2 weeks. So now her trip would include the opportunity to be in Australia and also now live in the city and be able to look after someone's house. And so in her mind, it sounded like such a wonderful thing to do. So in her mind, this created another level of happiness for her. But then there was a little change, and somebody said, actually, we don't know if this is a good idea, so actually we don't think that you should go and look after this house, so you should really stay in the temple. So this was taken away, or the possibility was taken away. Oh, she became so unhappy. She became like, oh, I'm not happy, I don't like this. I think I might go back to Japan. I think I will go back to Japan. So the mind now turned from being so happy to being unhappy just over something that happened. Now, if the event of the opportunity to go and look after this person's house hadn't come up, they've never even had a chance to start to feel unhappy over having felt like something's being taken away. It just would have been living with the wonderful opportunity to come to Australia, Shoshin Khan. So, we talked about this, and she thought about this, how her thinking about it was what was creating the unhappiness. Because if she reflected, isn't it just great to be here in Australia, the opportunity? I mean, if you were in Japan and you were wanting to come to Australia and you weren't even going to look after someone's house, wouldn't you want to come? Wouldn't it have been a great opportunity? Yeah, great. I really would feel so happy about that. So we can see how our mind can choose to look at something, and it's our ego self, really. There's a certain aspect of ourself that feels now, oh, I've been hard done by. Oh, something was taken away from me. And so we can think it in a negative way, and what makes us unhappy. So this was exactly how she changed her mind around and decided, actually, whether I go there or I don't go there, I feel so lucky to be here in Australia. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to stay in Australia, Shoshin Khan. So she turned her mind around and faced the light again, back to facing the positive aspect and feeling so lucky. So she changed her mind. Actually, then it did happen that she did go and look after the place for 2 weeks anyway. So, she had some extra happiness, but it was the chance that might be taken away created unhappiness. So this is the sort of thing and this is just a little example of how in our lives, as things come along, how we look at them determines whether we're facing happiness or facing unhappiness, just from things based on how we're looking at them. So I think this is this unhappiness syndrome, how it manifests in such simple little ways all through our lives. I mean, we can be in our work and our boss asks us to do something and we don't really feel like we should have to do that job, and we can focus on that, and it can become something really negative in our minds. The problem is that when we hold negative thoughts in our minds, it attracts more negative things in our lives, So, okay, so let's carry on. We'll go through this. I must have said that even though we all want unhappiness, many people are choosing thoughts and actions, and they're suffering from their own love of unhappiness. It's like we find a self that knows how to live. I found myself, and this self thinks this way, and this is me, and I think this way, and so when something happens, I think about it in this way. And even if this way is making me feel unhappy, it's still the me I've created, and we feel comfortable being like that. So today's seminars are going to be about recognizing that part of ourself and determining to change that way of thinking back to one that's always facing a bright way of looking at things. Okay, so Master said, within people's minds are temples to the goddess of misfortune. Let me just go back, because Master said that this is a condition in which subconscious mind fosters a desire for unhappiness that manifests self-destructive thoughts and behaviour. And he said within the minds of the people who have this unhappiness syndrome, their minds are temples to the goddess of misfortune, not the goddess of success, and monuments to the god of poverty, not the god of prosperity. So within our minds, we can be looking towards success, or we can be looking forward to prosperity. But instead, many people's minds are looking toward failure or looking towards poverty. So they think, I don't deserve that. I can never have that. That's not something that I will be able to attain. So our minds are focused here. But if we looked up here, our minds, this is where we could take ourselves by thinking in this direction. So Master said, how is it possible to repeatedly choose the opposite of what we consciously desire? So if we really want to be happy, and we always want to be happy people, how is it possible for us to choose the opposite? Well, he said that in most cases, people are simply unaware of this attraction to unhappiness. As I said about my friend before, they didn't even think about they were thinking like this. It just seemed natural. So the way that we think just seems natural. So we think this way without thinking whether or not this is a good way of thinking or not. Something happens and we think. And it just feels like, oh, that's how I should think. But with Happy Science, what we aim to do is think about what I'm thinking. So when we start thinking about what I'm thinking and whether this way of thinking is making me happy, then we can change our way of thinking. So one of the key things, when people think like that, they actually don't stand back and see their thoughts and behaviours clearly as a detached observer would. So what we're aiming to do in Happy Science is always become a person who can think, and then we think about that thought. What was I thinking? When I think like that, how does it make me feel? Do I want to feel that way? If it's making me feel unhappy, if it's making me feel negative, is that how I want to feel? No, I don't want to feel that way. So I change the way of thinking. In the Rebirth of Buddha, Master said, about the kingdom of the mind, the one thing we all have control or domain over is our mind. Each one of us, our thoughts are our own. I cannot make anybody think anything. We cannot make anybody think anything, but each one of us can think what we want to think. So if there's a thought we don't like, we have the power to change that thought. And we also have the power to plant thoughts in our mind that we want to have. So the people who are living with this unhappiness syndrome basically have got thoughts running through their minds, and they're not even recognizing the thoughts are there. And they're just passing through and they're living their lives. And that thought comes and then they say something, or they do something, they act something based on that thought without even recognizing that that thought is bringing them unhappiness. Today's one, like I say, is just to be able to understand this unhappiness syndrome. The next seminar next week will actually specifically be putting these 11 tendencies that people have, and we'll be focusing on them and looking within ourselves to see if we have them. Some we will have, some we won't have. But it's guaranteed. There's a total of 28 in the series of seminars altogether. And out of that 28, we're bound to at least find a few. You might even find 10 that you have, that you didn't realize that you have. Okay, so Master said that something really powerful about our mind is that our mind attracts what we fear or what we worry about. A lot of people are addicted to worrying. My mum was a little bit like that. I love my mum so much, but she used to worry. I'd get home late at night, 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock in the morning. And even when I'm like 18 or 19 years old, I've been out on Friday night and I get home and I try to get in quietly, go down the hall. And, is that you, Steve? Oh, yeah. Hi, Mum. She said, oh, okay. I said, just checking. I said, okay. You should have gone to sleep. She says, oh, I was worried about you. Don't worry. It doesn't make anything any better, right? If you worry about something, it doesn't make it better. If you worry, it doesn't mean it won't happen. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Worrying about it just means you live unhappy for that amount of time till you found out it didn't happen. Oh, I don't have to worry anymore. It didn't happen. So he came home safe. So now I don't need to worry anymore. So if you spent 4 hours worrying, you worried all that time and you felt unhappy. But then you found, oh, you're safe. Oh, good, I don't have to worry anymore. Okay, but what if instead of that, you recognize I have a tendency to worry, and so you don't worry. You say, well, I'm not going to worry, because what will happen will happen. It will be the same result. So I'll just feel, I'll have faith, everything will be okay. Whatever happens, it happens. Everything's being guided by God and the high spirits. So I have no worries. Okay, and then maybe you can sleep. So, yeah, this is... Actually, there's another side to it. If you worry about something, you actually are more likely to attract it. If you worry about something happening to somebody, you're more likely to cause problems to come to them. If you worry about losing your job, you're more likely to lose your job. If you worry about getting sick, you're likely to get sick. So this is the flip side of it. You'll actually do more harm by worrying. There's two sides. One, you're unhappy, and two, you're more likely to make it happen. Adam?
Steve, another one that I didn't even realise was unhappiness syndrome is when you miss someone.
Right.
You're missing something.
You're missing somebody, yeah.
You cannot stop, like, you can't even enjoy a moment.
No, because you're missing them, right?
Yeah.
This is actually one of the key, this is off the subject, but one of the key things in Happy Signs is to learn that love is just feeling love for people, and they don't need to be there with you. So even if someone's away from you, even if they're overseas or they might have passed away, love is the feeling you have for the person in your heart. You don't need to be with people. So yeah, we don't need to miss people once we learn to love them. Just the feeling of love for people is what's most enjoyable. Anyway, Master's going to give a talk, but this will be a short excerpt, about 2 or 3 minutes, about how our heart attracts what we fear.
The other half of your troubles is fear, being afraid. Everyone is afraid, terrified, and uneasy. What are you afraid of? What are you so uneasy about? You're afraid that something might come along and harm you. You're caught up in this fear every day. Every day you feel vaguely uneasy about your family, your children, work, health, future, and all kinds of things. You're suffering from uneasiness and fear. It is fear of that which hasn't come yet. You're living in uneasiness and fear, so your heart wavers and you suffer. But the law of truth is the complete opposite. Your heart draws out what you fear. It draws out that which terrifies us in the very depths of our hearts and minds. That which you truly fear will come to pass. The subconscious cannot discern between good and evil regarding the things that you have in your mind, so it draws them all out. If you fear too much for your children, then a frightful situation for your children will arise. If you fear too much for your husband, a frightful situation for him will come about. Even if on the surface you think, I don't want things to turn out this way, if you worry day in, day out about your husband will be caught in a situation exactly as you fear. In truth, you yourself are pulling these fears down upon you. You think to yourself, I'm getting sick. Then you go to the hospital where the doctor tells you that you have certain symptoms of the disease you thought, and suddenly your health collapses. You are pulling fearful things down upon your head. You must bring forth the opposite with a believing heart. You must believe in a bright future and fervently pray that the future will open up to you. You must fervently pray. Pray from your subconscious. It is important to believe strongly every day that there will never be any misfortune for anyone who believes in God, for anyone who lives in absolute love of God. Thus, if any of you pull uneasiness and fear towards yourselves, if any of you speak of your own unhappiness, then it is not God or Buddha or your Lord that is creating that unhappiness. It is you, yourself. It is your own stupid ego. It is your delusion. It's your ignorance. Demolish it. You're mistaken in the way that you think. Why don't you just believe? Get rid of all those clever little ways of thinking that are based upon the ego. Throw them away and learn obedience, humility, submission, and devotion. And when you do so without fail, absolute love for God and simultaneously absolute happiness will come to you. These people who hold fast in their hearts and walk forth on the path to God, seeking to become one with the Lord, it is these kinds of people who are loved by the Lord. It really isn't hard at all. And in the realm of faith, distance and time hold no sway. What you wish for is what comes about. What you wish for in the bottom of your heart is made real.
心底願ったものは実現するんです。
So please, strengthen your faithful heart.
高めてください。
Lift it up.
高めてください。
When all of your hearts have been raised, when all of your hearts have been truly purified and lifted up, then miracles will happen. Even if you're not looking for miracles to take place, they will. If you try to make them happen, they won't. When you throw away your expectations for special treatment and live in absolute faith, absolute happiness, and absolute love, then miracles will naturally occur. You yourself and the environment that surrounds you will all change naturally before you know it. It's really just like frost in the morning sun. If you think that you are unhappy, and there's nothing that can be done about it, but the truth is that all worry and fear are but frost before the newly risen sun. It will easily melt away. In truth, it was all just an illusion that you yourself, your ego, conjured up.
So the first starting point is to recognize it. Once we see it, like you said, it's like a frost that will melt away. And you remember a couple of weeks ago we had a seminar on faith. So this is really how the power of faith. If we have faith that I'm a spiritual being undergoing soul training and everything that's happening in my life is being given to me by God as part of this training, and nothing untoward can ever happen to me because I live in eternity. I'm a spiritual being. Nothing can really happen to me anyway. There's nothing to fear. I'm just here undergoing, this is like a play. We're in this world and it's a play, and I'm an actor in this play, playing the best part I can play. And at the end of the play, you go back to your real self, your real life. So nothing can happen to you. If you think like that, there's no fear. So the deeper your faith, the faith in your divine nature, the faith in your spiritual nature, the faith that other world exists, and the faith that God is looking after us and guiding us, the more deeper your faith is in that, the less there is to fear. The less you fear, the less the negative things that you'll create in your life. And as you said, all the things and your worries that you have that seem serious at the moment, when you see them that way, they melt away. So what we need first of all is the conscious awareness. Master said, without a conscious awareness of the self-defeating patterns that control our thoughts, we can neither recognize them when they arise nor take proper precautions to avert them. So the first thing we have to do is define the specific patterns that we have. We've got to go within ourselves and actually recognize, oh, I have a tendency to think like this. Sometimes when this sort of thing happens, I tend to think like this. So this is always going to be the first starting point, is to be able to, not just in our conscious mind, but deep down into our mind. So we put this under like recognizing the unhappiness syndrome within you, or within each one of us. Master said, we human beings have been granted full power over one important thing, our mind. Right, I was talking about this before. My mind's my mind. You know, even people in China, they cannot be told how they must think. Even people in North Korea, you know, the government tries to control their minds, but at the heart of it all, if somebody presented them with another idea, they could think like that. All they have to be shown is a new way of thinking, and they're the ones that can think like that. It might be hard to choose to think a certain way if we're not presented with the idea. So for people living in North Korea, it might be hard for them not to look at Kim Jong-un as like a god, because from the moment they're born until all their lives, they're told that he's a god and they're told to worship him. So maybe they don't know another way to think. But as soon as happy science came along and taught them, oh, you are free to think what you like, you have your own divine nature, and teach people in North Korea about how to think in a way to find happiness, they could change their thinking so quickly. So our minds are a wonderful gift that God gave us, and each one of us is responsible for our own mind. Master said, and the secret to mastering life, therefore, is mastering one's mind. Because if you don't have control of your mind, if something happens and then you think this way, you're not in control of your life. You're not in control of your happiness, right? If you go, let's take, John, your case, with your sales and business and things. If you're the sort of person who goes out and you meet somebody and then you offer them a product and then they turn you down, and then if you were a sort of person that immediately felt rejected and felt so down that that's it, I can't see anybody else today because this person's told me they don't want my product and it just hurt too much, so I'm not going to talk to anybody else today. You can never succeed in business, right? But if you change your mind thinking, there's another way of thinking as a salesperson. You can think, okay, it's a percentage game. When I talk to 20 people, out of 20 people, 5 people are going to say maybe, and 1 person is going to say yes eventually. So the person who just said no to me, thank you very much, now I only have 19 more people, and eventually I will have the success. Where's the next one? I'll talk to the next one. And they said no. Okay, thank you very much. That's 18. Great. Soon I will have this person, my 20th person, who will give me the success. Success might come after 4 or 5, you don't know. But you know it's a numbers game. So you keep that attitude. And that's how we train our mind to think in a way. We find a way of always thinking that makes it positive, that keeps us bright, that keeps us being able to keep our mind pointed towards the heaven, instead of a way of thinking that takes it down and makes us fail. Yeah. So, you must have said, the prevalence of negative thinking in the world is a telling indication that people are struggling to make use of this gift, and as a result are suffering from the effects of a dismal outlook on life. So what he had said was, we all have control of our minds. Each one of us is capable to think however we want. But most people in the world don't realize this. So on a day when the wind's blowing and something blows their way, they think, oh, that's why I have to think like this. Because this happened, I have to think like that. So they haven't learnt this rule, the truth, that they themselves can change their way of thinking. Yeah, it's the key to happiness. The key to happiness is discovering, oh, I can think however I want. I can change my mind. I can I'll find a way. And you know what? It's a skill. It becomes a skill to be able to find a way to look at the bright side. You know, it's something that if you practice it, you get better and better at it. You call it an optimist. You know, we call it an optimist. Some people are optimists, some people are pessimists. An optimist is just a person who's always able to find the bright side. And the wonderful thing in Happy Science is, because the Master's teaching about our purpose of our life on earth is just soul training, and even the worst thing that can happen to you is going to teach you something and give you wisdom. Now, even if you were put through suffering, it could be you're being put through suffering in your life. All these circumstances seem to be so difficult. It could be teaching you how to have the mind of an angel. You're learning about something so that you can help other people. You're learning to be an angel through the suffering. Oh, even suffering becomes something that you can see on a bright side. Yeah, so we're so lucky that the teachings of Happy Science, teaching the truth, show us that there is always a bright side, no matter how bad things can get. Yeah. Okay, so Master here is going to have a short lecture on creating a positive self-image.
Depending on the seeds of thought in your mind, your future will be positive or negative, optimistic or pessimistic, happy or unhappy. If you want to make your future filled with happiness, you should sow positive seeds in your mind and encourage their growth. In order to make these positive seeds grow, you need to think about them continuously. When you feel yourself becoming overwhelmed by negative thoughts, you need to create positive thoughts to counteract the negative ones. To do so, use willpower and make a daily effort. Do what you can today and have hope for tomorrow. When faced with negative thoughts, it's important to generate positive thoughts to fight against them. We cannot hold 2 contradictory thoughts at the same time. Someone who is happy cannot simultaneously be unhappy. It's impossible to talk about something sad while laughing, or to have a joyful conversation while crying sadly. Human beings cannot think of more than one thing at a time, so knowing what occupies your mind is very important. Have a positive self-image in which you're making progress, becoming more successful and contributing to society. Hold firmly to an image of those around you also becoming happy as you achieve happiness. Even when you feel defeated by negative thoughts around you, summon courage from within and again start reaffirming positive thoughts.
If you can practice this throughout your life, you will be able to use this ability in the other world too. This is nothing less than victory in life. To win against fate, it is very important to know how to change your mental attitudes and ways of thinking. I hope you truly understand that your thoughts generate great power. Thank you very much.
So Master said in the book, he said people allow negative thinking to pervade their mind even though they hold the power to change it. You know, here's another real simple example. Imagine in a company somebody got a bonus, right? $2,000, they got a bonus. But then they found out that their workmate got a $2,500 bonus. So they found that the guy 2 desks down got $2,500. So one moment, oh, I'm so happy, I got $2,000 bonus. Then they find out this guy got $2,500. That's not fair. How come he got $2,500? I only got $2,000. Suddenly, what was the source of a happiness can become the source of a suffering, you know? It happens so easily. And it would happen probably to any one of us. If you're in your company and you felt, especially if you felt you're working harder than this person, you're a better employee than him, but somehow their bonus was more. That's not fair. And suddenly our mind goes into this one of attracting, it's the unhappiness syndrome. We start thinking that's not fair. It's based on ego again, really. You know, it's the small self. It's now I look diminished because he got more, I got less. So someone's looking at me as if I'm not as good as him. So I don't feel good about myself. Yeah, in every aspect of our lives, this unhappiness syndrome or ways of thinking that brings unhappiness can just suddenly present itself so easily. So this is really the study of our mind. And the study of the mind and the determination of always being able to take it back to the place where we want to be, where we want to feel, because we want to be happy. When we said, I want to be happy, right? We said, I want to be happy. I choose to be happy. So now it's the control of determining where our mind's thinking, putting it always starts to come back, bring it back up again. Just by finding ways of thinking. We could say, well, you know, whatever reason my boss sees this person was worth more, or for whatever reason, it doesn't matter what he got. Actually, it's wonderful he got $2,500. You know, he needs the money. He will spend it on something wonderful. But I've got $2,000. How lucky I am. So we just focus on the positive for ourselves. Okay. So Master said when people allow this negative thinking to pervade their mind, even though they have the power to change it, it stems from the fact that their minds have become habituated to these thought patterns, which exert a constant magnetic attraction to additional pessimistic circumstances. So it creates like a magnetic force. It becomes just a normal way of thinking. It becomes our pattern. We don't even think about it. We think negative, but what that happens is it attracts more negative things to come into us. Now, Master gave a couple of examples, you know. For example of people having a pattern to react to other people's success with envy and resentment. So if somebody gets a promotion, you know, and you hear about their promotion, how do you feel? Do you feel really happy for them, or do you feel a little bit of resentment and envy? You know, I remember, we all have this tendency. It's so easy to feel resentful or envious and feel, oh, they don't deserve it. Oh, they got lucky. You know, oh, they must have done something, special favors for the boss, or the boss doesn't know what they're really like. It's very easy to have these thoughts. You know, I remember even with Unhappy Science here we study the truth and aim to really understand our minds. I remember maybe about, must be 4 or 5 years ago, when Brian was made director of the whole of South America, and not South America, South Africa, the African region. And when I heard Brian became the director of I realised, I had a pang of envy in my heart. How come Brian got to be director? I remember I heard myself say, oh my gosh, where did that thought come from? Why am I thinking, how come Brian became director? And I reflected and I realised, Brian deserves to be director. He's the right person for the job. He's done a really good job in his position and been promoted. But I did recognise that the first thing that hit me was a thought of, how come he got to be director? It's like this, it was a jealousy or an envy. I was surprised to see it, you know. So, but if we see the things, then we can change them, right? But if we don't see it and we just allow it to be flowing through, it's affecting our lives. So this was one, how we react to other people's success. The second one was people who go to psychics or fortune tellers to get readings that confirm their pessimistic outlook. See, a lot of people, nothing so bad always going to a psychic or fortune teller, but a lot of the time when people go there, they're actually happy to hear the bad news.
Or their best friend feeds them more.
Yeah, that's right. But they're happy, you know, when the fortune teller tells them that, oh, actually, you're probably going to have a bankruptcy, or, you know, you're probably going to split from your wife, or, you know, your child is probably going to have an accident. They feel like, oh yes, now that I know that, I'm prepared for it. So now that I'm ready for that, now if I'm ready myself for that, it's not going to be so bad when it happens. Right? If I'm ready for the separation from my wife, since I've prepared myself for it, it's not going to be so bad now when it comes. But the problem is, because we start thinking like that and preparing that, that's the future we create for ourselves, because our mind is so powerful. So, yeah, often people will go to psychics or fortune tellers because they're more happy to hear the problems that are going to come up in their life, so they can prepare themselves. It's like an insurance. Oh, I'm happy that I knew this was coming. So now, yeah, John.
I got a birthday gift for a friend to go and see like a card reading or reading, and she said big things are going to happen, like he was going to be successful in his career and his acting career, but because he's got a negative mindset, it didn't happen.
Right, yeah.
His mindset was different from the way that we think.
Yes.
He would achieve it.
Yep.
But because he thinks that he knows everything already and you can't tell him anything,
yeah. Actually, I remember Master once saying this interesting thing about fortune tellers. They'll often have a negative, give you a negative reading, because if they give you a positive one and it doesn't happen,
yes,
you know, you're going to complain. You told me that these good things will happen in my life. But if they give you a negative reading and it doesn't happen, no one goes and complains that, oh, you told me that I was going to lose my job and I didn't lose my job, right? Nobody complains. But if you tell them, oh, you're going to get it next year, you'll have a wonderful new job, it's going to be a perfect job just for you, you're going to have a huge rise in your salary, and next year when it doesn't happen, the person's not happy, right? So, yeah, they tend to be negative in their outlook because it's safer. Okay, then the third one was people with financial problems from gambling or high-risk investments, leading themselves in a downward spiral of self-destruction. So sometimes people, they spend more than they earn, and they just keep doing it, and they keep doing it, and they don't stop. You know, the easy way would be to do a balance sheet to see how much income I've got, how much I'm going out, and aim to live a life within your means. But some people, they just keep spending because what it's causing is they're creating unhappiness in their lives, and they're addicted to unhappiness. And the way they're getting to feel this unhappiness is from this debt. It sounds so strange, but it's the tendency of their mind that they've created. It's the ego they've created. It's the self that they know. They don't know how to be somebody different. So, I mean, I've got a friend in New Zealand who, Japanese lady, and she's got another Japanese lady that lives with her. And she was working, but she was going to the casino all the time, to the extent that she would be there so late at night that the next day she would miss going to work because she couldn't get up in time. And she lost her job. So, she was losing money at the casino, and then she lost her job, so she became even worse off. And she just, no matter how bad it gets, she just keeps going through this cycle. So this is people who have created an unhappiness syndrome. They don't realize it, but they've created an attraction to the unhappiness, and they're living their lives fulfilling the unhappiness. The only way out of it is to recognize it and change ourselves. Okay. So Master said, it is their subconscious attraction to unhappiness that is leading them down this path. So the first step, how do we get out of this? Well, the crucial first step is to take us the crucial first step to take to start your self-transformation is to understand how this thought system is leading you to unhappiness. Now, this is the real first point. It's being able to say, this is making me... Sorry, John, go back. Sure.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so it's once we recognise that it's leading us to the path to unhappiness, then we can decide to make the change. Okay, so finding your patterns of unhappiness. Okay, so how do we find our patterns of unhappiness? Well, first, we've got to begin by realising you are in fact suffering from the unhappiness syndrome. The Master said that many people believe their mind is perfectly healthy when they're actually suffering. So a lot of people say, and that's like I say, when I first looked at this, I never would have guessed that I have the unhappiness syndrome. I thought, no, I'm a very happy person. I've always been happy. I'm not going to have any of this in me. And then when I started really deeply studying, I realized that, oh, there's some parts of myself. I also have a tendency towards some of this unhappiness syndrome. So we have to realize that if there's any parts of us that don't feel really happy, that this is part of us that's probably attracting some unhappiness. So, the vital foundation for healing is a clear awareness of our inner impulse for unhappiness. Master said the first step is to look beneath the surface, put yourself into perspective, and see yourself just as you are. So we've got a 6-minute just contemplation on this, where we're just going to think about times in our life when we're dealing with, let's say, our relationships with other people, or our school, or our work. Times in our life, if there's times when we choose unhappiness, are there times when I decide to look at something in a way that makes me unhappy? Hopefully you could think of some times in your life when you've experienced unhappiness and realize how your way of thinking or acting was responsible for that. I remember, some years back, I was in a relationship with somebody, and we used to, both of us used to tell each other that I love you, regularly. We would tell them, I love you. And this one night we were at the movies, and the movie's just about to start, and just started. She's sitting next to me, she said, I love you. But it didn't just feel natural enough or just spontaneous enough for me to reply, I love you in return. So I didn't say anything. So later that night when we got back to her place, she said, how come you didn't say you love me when I said I love you? And I said, well, at the time it just didn't feel spontaneous enough. I felt like I didn't want to say it because I should, because you said it. I wanted to feel like I say it naturally. So it just didn't feel right in that moment. So we ended up having a big argument about this. And I remember in the end rolling over and thinking, oh my gosh, this is just, so much, too serious. So anyway, I left it at that, and about 2 weeks later, she brought it up again. And I realized for 2 weeks, she'd been holding on to it. And you know what, considering when you're in a relationship with somebody, you want to be able to be in a relationship because it creates happiness with each other. So we have to be careful sometimes not to do something in that relationship that sabotages the happiness of the relationship. By making a problem or an issue about something, it's in a way, it's creating unhappiness for both people. I think this is something, sometimes people almost deliberately sabotage their relationships by doing or saying things to people that create a problem in the relationship. It's a strange thing, but it can happen quite easily. Okay, so Master said, when you've identified your specific patterns, set up a strategy to help you stop your suffering and growing further. Because once we have them, if we have these tendencies, like anything, if it's left, it will grow and become a stronger and stronger tendency. So once we recognize them, we need to remove them, get rid of them. He said to come up with a plan, you'll need to be able to see yourself from a higher standpoint. Well, we're so lucky. That's what the teachings of Happy Science allow us to do. Because of Master's teachings, we can study the teachings of Master Okawa and see our ideal self. We can recognize an ideal way of thinking. We can see a way of looking at things that is a higher perspective. Actually, it's from our true self. If we can see things from the perspective of our true self, then we will, which is the self that just wants to give love and make other people happy. It doesn't want to take from other people, just wants to give love to other people. When we can see from that perspective, it's really easy to see the parts that are going to create unhappiness. So Master said, gaining an elevated perspective essentially means gaining mastery over your mind and restoring its pure original state. Because our pure original state, our divine nature, is a part that is seeking to bring happiness to others and finding happiness in that. It's not trying to take from other people. It's not trying to do anything. It has no needs from other people. The Master said it means mastering the skill of controlling your mind. So once we learn to look in our mind and see the parts of ourself that's creating unhappiness, and we take control of it, You know, this is our soul training. Soul training in this earth is very much this. It's, what do we call it in Happy Science? Exploration of the right mind. Exploration of the right mind means that looking within our mind, how do I think? What sort of person am I? How am I thinking? Is this in line with the mind of God or Buddha? And then recognizing the difference between how I'm thinking and how God or Buddha would think about something, and trying to take my thoughts closer, always closer toward the mind of God or Buddha. He said this requires understanding the workings of the mind, and there's no surer way to do that than to understand the thoughts that are possible. You know, our minds, we've got free will. We can think anything. It's a wonderful gift. Now, if God had have only wanted everybody to be happy, He could have created a being that can only think positive. But we would be restricted in our thinking. If God said, all humans will be happy, but it means you can only have good thoughts. I'll create a being that can only have good thoughts. It's a world of positivity. But God didn't create us like that. God made us as humans, just like Him, that can think anything. So what we need to do is to be able to recognize the thoughts that go on in our mind, and as I was saying before, find ways of making those thoughts something really wonderful and something really positive. So there's a short excerpt here from Master called "Sow Positive Seeds in Your Mind." Let's watch this.
You may have negative thoughts, such as, I'm finished because I failed this time, or I was told so badly, or told, you are incompetent, or you're stupid, or I couldn't go to a good school, or my parents hate me, or my friends ignore me, or I failed in business. There may be many such thoughts, but you must not allow those negative thoughts to come into yourself and take root into your mind. Instead, since humans cannot think of two things at the same time, you might as well make efforts to think it in the opposite way. You can walk around the issue by thinking, perhaps it is possible to think this way. Thus, you can constructively change your perspective. I'm in trouble. But this may be an opportunity if viewed differently. He is always very negative to me. But this could be the chance to improve myself. Or he may have a point, and he's trying to educate me. It's important to see if you can change the way you think, or the way you understand others. Life may be full of trials, but if you change your thought to a more positive and affirmative one, and sow such positive and affirmative seeds in your mind, beautiful flowers will blossom in your future, resulting in fruit in the future. So you should make an effort to always think in this way.
Yeah, so the mind is like a garden, and you know, we're planting the seeds that are going to sprout in the garden. And you know, the Unhappiness Syndrome is really about recognizing the seeds that have been planted that's creating flowers or plants, the weeds, you know, the weeds in our mind really. So the Unhappiness Syndrome is recognizing the weeds that we've planted in our mind or let sprout. We didn't even plant them often, they just seem to pop up like weeds do in a garden. But our life is about planting good seeds and pulling out the weeds, you know, and this is how we do exploration of the right mind and create the beautiful mind. Constantly look for the weeds and pull them out and plant nice seeds all the time. So Master said, as you discover new thought patterns and delve deeply into them, you will discover more solutions and methods for overcoming unhappiness, and all these solutions will become your own wisdom. So it's wonderful, you know, this is our soul training. We are discovering a mind that's able to think anything. It naturally has thoughts coming up, and we're recognizing these thoughts, and then we're finding ways to change that thought back to something more positive, something more beautiful. And the more and more we do that, the more we understand our mind, the more power we have to do that under any circumstances. So as we go through life, we'll find that no matter what happens, I've got a tool, I've got a way to be able to bring this mind to somewhere really wonderful and positive. So here are now the 4 signs that you've ended your relationship with happiness. And, this is, Master said, to put an end to your happiness, you not only want to end your negative thinking, but also become and stay happy. He had a wonderful analogy here. He said becoming happy is like when a plane takes off. You go down the runway, plane goes down the runway, and then it gets a certain speed, and it gets lift, right? And it lifts up. So this is like us finding a positive way of thinking. When we see something negative and we find a way of changing our mind, that gives us the lift. And we can lift our minds up, and then a plane will get to like 30,000 feet and soar along. It maintains that level. So that's like us finding happiness and staying there. But we have to make adjustments. We have to see what thoughts are in our mind. If a negative thought came into our mind and we didn't notice it, the plane could suddenly be coming down. This is our negativity coming down. So to keep flying ourselves or maintaining our stability, we need to be able to have the ability to constantly be checking our mind and making adjustments, just like the plane makes the adjustments to the wings to keep the plane flying stably. So, he said, to maintain your happiness, a careful examination of your past should help you discern the specific negative patterns you are most prone to and show you how each of them affects your life. So our life is a study. Our mind is a study. We can look back and we can see, some of you guys are a little younger, you haven't had the experience yet, but you already have some experience that you can reflect on. But as we go through our lives and we get more and more experience and more events, we get more and more things that we can reflect on and come to understand our mind. We can see so many ways of thinking in our mind. And then, as we said before, by having the control of our mind and being able to dictate how I think, this is mastery over life. If you become a person who can see what's in your mind and decide what you're thinking, you'll never be unhappy again. Once you're determined to be happy, if I decide I'm going to be happy, I can see what's in my mind and I can choose what I think, you'll never be unhappy again. Yeah. So, it must have said this way, you'll be able to recognize these patterns when they arise and return to happiness more quickly. And your ability to control your mind will improve, and you'll be able to maintain longer and longer states of happiness. So this is all about being able to look within the mind, have the wisdom to see the ways of thinking that's in line with happiness and what's creating unhappiness, and then to have the control to be able to think the way you want to think. Okay, so these are the 4 signs. This one, okay, now are you ready to discover whether you're happy or not, right? This is the moment of truth. The first one, waking up every morning feeling excited about life. Do you wake up every morning feeling, yes, it's another day, fantastic, here we go, it's wonderful to be alive, so happy to be alive today. I realize I don't feel like that. Maybe I used to feel like that. Some days I feel pretty happy about life, but I don't wake up feeling, oh God, it's another day. But I don't feel excited enough. I want to feel more excited about life. I want to wake up thinking, yes, thank you, Lord, for another day. I can really live today to the fullest. I want to make the most of today. I want to feel like that, and I don't feel like that enough. So I realized this first one, I don't feel excited enough about life. So the second one was a sense of vitality filling every inch of your body and a constant eager itch to work. So when we're really happy, our bodies become full of energy. We have so much energy and vitality that we just want to work. And I don't feel that enough either. I feel a little lethargic. I feel a little tired. So obviously my mind is not full of happiness enough if I'm feeling like that. I'm not attracting enough light into myself. The third one was the ability to see the wonderful aspects of everyone around you. Are you always seeing all the wonderful? Are you thinking how wonderful everybody is? Or sometimes are you seeing people as enemies? If we see people as enemies or people who we're competing with or people we don't like, then we are suffering from the unhappiness syndrome as well. Okay, the fourth one was believing that you're here to serve a higher purpose beyond yourself. If you feel that your whole purpose of your existence is because of something more than yourself, that you have a higher purpose to your life, then you also can easily connect with with happiness, and you can move away from unhappiness. But these are the 4 signs that you've reached consistent state of happiness. So if you cannot say yes, 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 then we have work to do. I have work to do. When I look at that, I know, oh, I need to improve on my happiness here. So it was a surprise for me, especially that first one, when I realized I don't feel excited enough about life and I don't have enough vitality on number 2. Okay.
You felt that too, did you?
Yeah, I thought I don't wake up with enough feeling, yes, here we go, into the day. I'm ready, let me at it. Yeah, Adam.
I read this book, the first couple of chapters, and it's absolutely shocking. It's so shocking.
You know, Master Okawa will wake up every morning feeling excited about the day, what I can do today, you know. Waking up feeling excited about life and the chance to do more today. How can I make the most of today? Like he said before, you know, live each day as if it's your whole life. Pretend in one day that's your whole life. That's all you have is one day. How much can I do today? It's my whole life, this one day. And if we can live like that, then we can have this, you know, excited feeling about life, and we can have the sense of vitality and enthusiasm. But that's something I want to work on myself. I want to have more feeling of that. Wake up in the morning, happy to be alive. You know, most people wake up, and for average people, oh gosh, here we go, another day of work. I got the problems with the boss. I got to meet these people. You know, some people don't even want to talk to their wife. You know, oh gosh, got to put up with the wife again. So many people are living their lives with so much negativity in their lives. And this is a attraction to unhappiness. This is part of the unhappiness syndrome. They've filled their lives with ways of thinking that's creating unhappiness. The only way to change it is change ways of thinking and bring happiness back into our lives. So we're nearly, at the end of this, we're going to be doing a meditation. Meditation for light. It's a meditation of light. And we're not quite, we're going to probably a couple of minutes before we do that. But the meditation of light is all about focusing on the bright. Focusing on the positive. So it's the easy way to feel happy. But just before then, Master said, he said, perhaps no other form of happiness can be greater than the joy we experience when the life we have chosen, the decisions we have made to follow our hearts, and the effort we put into being the best we can be, all results in increased happiness for others. This is an ideal way of living that he's just said in this one sentence here. You know, no other form of happiness can be greater than the joy we experience when the life we have chosen, the decisions we have made to follow our hearts, and the effort we put into being the best we can be, all results in increased happiness for others. It means living your life to the fullest. It means deciding how you're going to live your life, mapping out, making a plan in your life, what you're going to do, what's your occupation, how you're going to live. Every day, waking up with that vitality, waking up with enthusiasm, every day doing the best you can for the day, and seeing how the result of your day brought happiness to other people. He said there's no other happiness that we can experience than that. Okay, so let's start on this meditation of light. And the meditation of light has some guidance from Master Okawa at the beginning. So Master Okawa will explain a little bit. This will last in total about 24 minutes. And it will have, as I said, Master will give some guidance at the very beginning. So next week we'll actually look at, so this was all about understanding the unhappiness syndrome and how it affects our lives. We all have this divine nature, this Buddha nature. It's like I don't know about you guys, when I reflected on that, you know, the first self-reflection, for some reason I could see myself as a baby, like at about maybe 2 or 3 years old, and smiling and laughing up at maybe my parents, looking down on them, and how it must have looked such a wonderful, beautiful, pure child, so innocent and just bubbly and smiley and laughing. And that's the image I got. It made me cry. And you know, so we all have this divine nature, this beautiful, wonderful nature within. It's just the nature of God, the nature of Buddha. That's our true self. But when we come into this world, we create this self that wants to make sure that it's a preservation, and it's necessary. It's a nature to look after ourselves, because we have to, you know, because we feel that we need to survive. But through that, it causes us to create a mindset that becomes too much concerned about ourselves. and we lack our kindness, and we lack the gentleness, and we start to think in ways that are more about thinking about ourselves and less thinking about other people. So this is a way to be able to recognize that self and to bring back our true self, our divine nature. And living with our divine nature, we feel happy, you know. Our sense of happiness when we are living with our true self is just complete. We just feel so happy because we feel like there's nothing I need. I'm loved by God, that's all I need. I have this wonderful self that lasts forever. Nothing can hurt me. So we feel so wonderful. But it's when we put these thoughts in our minds that feel like I have to look after myself, and I have an ego, and I have to think about how I look compared to other people, or someone's doing better than me, or comparing myself to other people. We create the self that can't feel happy in this world. So this understanding the unhappiness syndrome is about discovering this part of our mind that we've created that isn't our true self, and then changing it back to our true self, letting our true self come back out again. So next week, what we'll look at is these 11, the tendency to envy other people, this feeling we have no enthusiasm, this fear of being hurt, not being assertive enough, being trapped in the past, feeling we don't fit in, not being trusted by other people, feeling we have a lack of confidence in our intelligence, that we can't achieve our high aspirations, that we can't stop thinking pessimistically, or that we have a secret that we don't want other people to know. So these are the 11 things that we will think about individually and think, oh, is this part of myself that's causing my way of thinking to cause me to suffer? And then we have within the book the antidotes. So we have also the remedy. So this is the illness, and then we also, luckily Master has given us the cure. So we'll reflect on these, discover them, say goodbye. That's it. So let's, we don't really have time for Q&A, so we did that along the way a little bit. So let's finish up with Blue Prayer Book, Prayer to the Lord and Prayer to Guardian and Guiding Spirits. Wonderful. Thanks very much, everybody. Let's go get something to eat. Arigatou gozaimashita.